factors that affect human resource management in global markets, they're deeper than you actually realize. It's huge. You have compensation issues. You have different levels of economic development in each country as you go through. You have family. All of a sudden now, human resources in the United States, we avoid the dialogue of you and your family. What do you plan on doing with your family as you go through? You're going to bring them with you? We always avoid those conversations, but now you're talking about putting somebody in a different country on behalf of your country, your company as you go through, and all of a sudden now they got to worry about their family because they don't get to go home 20 minutes away. They get to go home 2,000 miles away or 10,000 miles away, or they get to go home 20 minutes away in a different country with their children going to a different school that speaks a different language. All these are issues that you're going to have to face in human resources. It becomes much more complicated because instead of you worrying about the employee 8 to 10 hours every single day because they're in the workplace, you got to worry about them 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, because the whole world is very different. Here are the 4 different factors. Number one, above all things, is this culture thing. We're used to being in our culture as you go through and you transplant them into a different culture, different norms, different expectations, different ways to even sit down and talk business. Do you sit down and talk business right away like an American does? Or do you wait until dessert is served as you go through? Do you show up on time like most Americans like to start on time as you go through? If you do that in South America, you'll be shunned in the process as you go through. You always have to sit down. Do you talk? If you're the youngest person in the room, should you talk first or let the older person talk in the room? All these are issues that you need to pay attention to because it's different in every culture that you go through. You also have the education, the aspect of human capital as you go through. Is education valued in the country that you're going to? Some places you'll have super educated people as you're going through doing low-level work because there's simply not enough jobs. They might have free education. I know a guy in Egypt who actually was an oarsman on a boat, and he had a PhD in Shakespearean English. Like, I'm not even certain what you do with Shakespearean English. What he did with it was he was busy paddling an oar on a boat on a felucca as you go through. So education, but is it relevant education to your company as you go through? Then you have the political legal system. Is it okay to bribe an official? Should you bribe an official? If you're an American, it's against the law. If you're French, it's okay as you go through. It just depends what it is when it comes down to it. And then the economic system as you go through. A lot of countries, when you sit down talking about less than $7,000, you're dealing with developing countries as you go through, and the aspect of spending $7,000 in the United States is not a big deal. In their country, it's an annual saving for the entire year as you go through. All these are factors that you in human resources will have to pay attention to, and it's not just something on the side, it's something that's major in the employees that are working in those countries as you go through. Culture. It's the most important factor as you go through. Got to pay attention to the aspect of the country's laws, the human capital, how they treat people. Do they treat people equitably as you go through? Friend of mine, she's a physical therapist. She's a dual citizen of the United States and Egypt. We're talking, and she pulled out her driver's license from Egypt, and on there, she has her religious faith on her driver's license. That would never happen here in the United States. As a matter of fact, people would be saying discrimination, discrimination. It's okay to discriminate there, but not here. You're going to have different values, different aspects of the employment thing where the values roll into the employment thing that are very different than you're used to here in the process. Different economic systems, different ways that you're sitting on dealing with the human capital aspect, how you deal with them, how you deal with gender differences as you go through, different aspects of respect. What does that mean in our country versus the country that you're going to? You have to sit down there and have people that have open minds and that are capable of adapting as you go through. Culture dominates the agenda as you go through. Hofstede has a series of them as you go through. please feel free to read them and have them in your mind. The individual versus the collectivism. It sounds interesting. Americans are very individualistic. You go to Japan, it's totally different in the process. Even though you may have similar democratic values, you have different values when it comes down to how people treat each other in the social aspect of it, whether you have a high interaction or low interaction culture as you go through the power distance, the uncertainty of avoidance, the aspect of masculinity, femininity. I had a group of Chinese HR professionals just come to the United States to see how we did business as you go through. I'm sitting there where we have a group of people flew in from LA. They came to our place on a 2-hour drive. These poor 16 human resource professionals from China, they're exhausted from the airplane flight and they hauled them around in 2 hours in the thing. We're all sitting in the room. We're talking about how we do human resources versus the contrast with Chinese as you go through. They're asking questions about how HR regulates and provides licenses for people to have children. They're talking about how HR deals with the aspect of marriage. We don't do that over here. And so we had this interesting dialogue, and all of a sudden, one of my women police officers comes in to the office and she talks about it, and then she leaves and she says, "You have women police officers? That's a man's job." I said, "No, wait a minute. You're the communist. Everybody should be equal in your government. What do you mean it's a man's job?" Just they were laughing at me because of the fact that us Americans had women police officers, something they would never have heard of in that era of China as you go through. People, sometimes they come across totally different than you expect. It was certainly one of the most engaging conversations, and we kept this dialogue up for multiple years after that. It was a lot of fun to see people in the same profession in a different culture, totally different than anything that we're used to in the process as you go through. Huge implications, how managers behave in relation to subordinates, appropriateness of HR practices, how employees value certain aspects of the work environment. In Japan, they have a problem with people working too many hours. As you go to other countries, they have people working too few hours as you go through. Compensation systems. If they're here in the United States and the average salary is $100,000, you go to another country with exactly the same job title, same job duties, they're paying them $17,000 a year. How do you cope with that? How do you send an American used to making $100,000 to a country where exactly the same job makes 1/5 of what they're making over here? That's a problem as you go through. Communication, coordination, cultural aspects of it. Are there educational opportunities? If somebody goes to another country, will their children have the same educational opportunities? What if they end up being allowed to go to one of the top-notch schools in the country and they come back over here and all of a sudden you can't afford to put them in the top-notch school in America? They're back in public schools as you go through. You have those kind of aspects of it. You have different things of a low human capital, how it attracts different facilities that require low skills and low wage levels as you go through, or you have high human capital that attracts direct foreign investment to create high-skilled jobs. A lot of different venues as you're going through. In each culture, you'll have to deal with this aspect as you go through. Training, compensation, hiring, firing. Sometimes firing is more than they don't do the work. It's a matter of, have you trained them properly, and what is the culture? Try to lay somebody off in France. By the way, it takes about 2 years to have that happen as you go through. So you have to pay attention to, when you open a job, what are the long-term consequences as you go through? You have different aspects, different norms as you go through. What kind of incentives should you apply in a different culture as you go through? And how does all this impact the compensation packages and the pay slips as you go through? A lot of factors in the human resource management of global markets, because you don't deal with just they come to work 8 to 10 hours a day. It's a life experience for the people that are involved, whether they're people coming from our country to their country, or just opening a new office. They're totally different as you go through, and hiring people within the country as well. Culture, huge impact, education levels, politics, and the legal system as you go through, and then also the economics. Those are the 4 broad brushstrokes that really affect human resource management when you deal in global markets. Take care.